Did you know one of the most universal human experiences, something pretty much all of us will face, could actually silently, maybe relentlessly, impact your physical health to the point where it nearly doubles your risk of death within just a decade?
Yeah, it sounds quite jarring, doesn't it?
It really does. And we're not talking about, a chronic illness or some kind of sudden accident. We're talking about grief. We tend to think of grief as purely emotional, right? Like this wave of sadness or heartbreak that, yeah, it's intense, but it eventually eases off. But there's some new, really compelling research showing a much deeper physical and long-term health toll, how persistent grief can affect our bodies, even our longevity. So our mission today on the deep dive is to really plunge into this groundbreaking research. It kind of shifts how we understand loss. We want to go way beyond just the emotional weight, to uncover the very real, often hidden physical shadows that unrelenting grief can cast. We hope to give you some insights that challenge the usual thinking and maybe offer new ways to understand and find support.
Exactly. And what's truly revolutionary here isn't just about feeling sad, though that's obviously huge. It's about the actual concrete physiological impact. We're diving into some pretty robust findings. There's this study published in Frontiers in Public Health that tracked people for a full 10 years. And this research, well, it brought to light some really undeniable connections between that persistent, unrelenting grief and serious health outcomes, including, yeah, a significantly higher risk of dying. It really forces us to rethink what getting through a loss actually means. It emphasizes that it's so much more than just an emotional thing. It's a whole body experience,
Yeah.
with potential long-term consequences.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then, because that headline finding from the study, the 10-year one, it's really arresting. Persistent grief symptoms nearly doubled the risk of death within 10 years. When I first read that, it honestly felt like a punch to the gut. It's such a powerful statement, almost unbelievable, and definitely not something most people would naturally link to just the feeling of grief. It sounds so visceral. How do they even measure that?
Well, it is visceral because the effects are physical. The study was meticulous. It followed 1,735 bereaved relatives for a whole decade, and they specifically focused on folks who lost a loved one to natural causes. So this wasn't just a quick look, it was long-term, watching how grief evolves, or sometimes how it doesn't. The researchers, they carefully mapped out different grief patterns, and they found this small but really significant group, about 6% of the participants who had what researchers called a high grief trajectory, which basically meant their grief symptoms stayed severe, just unrelenting, showing little or no improvement for years after the loss.
Wow, years later, still feeling that intense despair.
Yeah, imagine that intensity years on. That's the kind of persistence we're talking about.
So for that 6%, the high grief trajectory group who couldn't seem to find that easing over time, what did their experience actually look like compared to the others whose grief did naturally subside? What were the sort of measurable, tangible differences in their health, their healthcare use that the study showed? Because this isn't just feeling bad, right? There are numbers.
You're absolutely right. It's not anecdotal at all. The numbers paint a stark picture. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this high grief group faced a much, much heavier burden. Quantifiable, like you said. They were almost twice as likely to die within that 10-year follow-up period compared to the low grief group. That's huge.
That is likely.
Yeah. And beyond that really stark mortality statistic, they were almost 3 times more likely to use mental health services, which points to a deep, ongoing psychological struggle needing professional help. And maybe even more startling, they were over 5 times more likely to be prescribed and use antidepressants.
5 times.
5 times. And more than twice as likely to use sedatives or anxiety meds. This heavy reliance on psychotropic medication really highlights how overwhelming their symptoms were. It suggests that, for this group, the usual coping strategies, maybe even initial support, often just wasn't enough to bring real relief. It's a clear sign of the internal battle they were fighting daily.
It just sounds like this constant uphill struggle. And these weren't just effects right after the loss, were they? Like the immediate aftermath. The study showed this went on for a long time, right? A prolonged pattern of distress and needing more medical help, way beyond what people might think of as the normal grieving time.
Exactly. Yeah, the impact stretched much, much further than most people would imagine. Doctor visits for this high grief group stayed significantly elevated for up to 7 years after the loss.
7 years.
7 years. So not just a brief crisis response, it was a sustained, often urgent need for medical help over a really long time. And what's particularly telling, I think, is that out-of-hours doctor calls, the ones that often signal urgent distress that can't wait for office hours,
Yeah.
were also noticeably higher during years 4 through 6.
4 to 6 years later. Still needing urgent calls.
Think about that. Yeah, 4 to 6 years post-loss, still having distress so profound, it often turns into nighttime or weekend emergencies. It just clearly shows their struggles and medical needs were persistent, overwhelming, often needing urgent attention when maybe other supports weren't available. It's really a testament to how debilitating this prolonged state can be.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit chilling. How does this emotional state, this unresolved, persistent grief, actually translate into such big physical health risks, even increased mortality? Are we talking about like active damage happening to the body? What's the biggest physical threat here that maybe people don't usually think about with grief?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's where other research helps fill in those crucial biological gaps. While the Frontier study focused more on the outcomes, lots of other research strongly suggests that ongoing, unrelenting grief basically keeps your body's fight or flight stress response permanently switched on. This means your key stress hormones, especially cortisol, stay elevated for long stretches. Your system is just bathed in these stress chemicals. Your body gets locked in this constant survival mode, always on high alert, even when there's no immediate physical danger. And that's not just a feeling, it's a biochemical reality that's really hard on the system.
Right. And what does that chronically high cortisol, that constant survival mode, actually do to your body over time? What are the concrete physical consequences? Is it active damage?
Oh, absolutely. We are talking about active, sustained damage. Chronically high cortisol isn't just about feeling tired. It relentlessly messes with your sleep patterns, making truly restorative rest almost impossible. And sleep is foundational for health. It also significantly cripples your immune defenses, makes you much more vulnerable to everyday bugs, slows down healing from even minor things, and over time, this constant strain actually speeds up cellular aging. It impacts your telomeres, those protective caps on your DNA, and contributes to system-wide inflammation.
Yeah.
Your body literally just wears down under this constant biochemical pressure.
Wow.
Yeah. So this sustained physiological stress makes you more prone to everything from, common colds to more serious chronic issues, heart problems, maybe even certain cancers. It offers a pretty clear biological explanation for why those people with long-lasting grief in the study had those higher death rates over the 10 years. It's like a silent enemy inside.
And beyond the hormones, the internal stuff, the sources also mentioned something we can all probably relate to. Just how incredibly hard it is to keep up with healthy routines, basic self-care when you're totally overwhelmed by grief. It's not just internal processes, it's the external behaviors too. I mean, think about a time you were just utterly overwhelmed by anything. Even basic tasks feel huge. I remember hearing about someone, hypothetically of course, who was so consumed by loss they just stopped opening their mail, let alone thinking about cooking or going for a walk. It really shows how these basic self-care things just fall away.
You've hit on such a critical point there,
Yeah.
absolutely. When grief gets that overwhelming and persistent, everyday self-care almost inevitably slides. It becomes profoundly harder to eat well or get regular exercise or even just sleep consistently when sadness or yearning or that deep numbness just dominates your whole day. The energy it takes to plan a healthy meal or lace up your shoes for a walk or stick to a bedtime routine, it just feels impossible.
And that creates this vicious cycle, right? Unhealthy eating, chronic poor sleep, lack of movement. It all adds another heavy layer of physical strain. This just compounds the already huge emotional burden. It creates a very clear, sort of two-pronged path from unrelenting grief to a serious decline in physical health. It's like you're fighting on multiple fronts, inside and out. So what does all this mean for you, our listener? Or maybe for someone you know who might be struggling? This new, deeper understanding of grief's long-term health impact makes it crystal clear that it's not just something to get through on your own or to just, wait out. How can we spot persistent grief, either in ourselves or others? And crucially, what concrete, actionable steps can actually be taken to address it effectively?
This is really crucial because for most people, that intense emotional response to loss, the overwhelming sadness, the deep yearning, maybe anger, numbness, difficulty functioning, it typically starts to ease and shift over months. It doesn't vanish, but its sharp edges soften, the intensity lessens. But when these intense feelings stay unrelenting, without much change, leading to persistent symptoms like chronic insomnia or clinical depression, severe anxiety, or maybe a prolonged loss of appetite or even overeating, chronic stress signs, profound social withdrawal, and this lasts for a long time. That's a significant sign of prolonged or complicated grief.
How long is long?
Well, the general guideline is if those symptoms stay strong, pervasive, really disrupted for a year or more after the loss, that's a very clear indicator that you need and absolutely deserve additional targeted support. It's definitely more than just feeling bad. It's a physiological and psychological state that really warrants intervention.
And it's so important for you to know if you recognize yourself or someone you care about in that description, you are absolutely not alone. These findings really prove that persistent grief isn't something to just ignore or minimize or try to tough out. It's a genuine health concern. Recognizing it is the first step.
Indeed. And what's kind of fascinating here is that while the struggle is so real, so personal, healing isn't about erasing the memory of the person you lost. It's not about getting over them. It's more about finding a way to integrate that loss into your life, to create space for life to continue, for joy and meaning to come back. Alongside that enduring love and memory, the memory can shift,
Hmm.
from being a source of just acute pain to one of cherished remembrance, a really important part of your story.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So this raises the big question: what concrete steps can you actually take? Well, the first, and maybe the most vital, is to just allow your grief to be yours.
Yeah.
Don't try to force yourself into those predefined stages or some kind of timeline. Society sometimes pressures us to move on, but whatever you feel, anger, numbness, quiet sadness, even moments of unexpected joy, it's all valid. So instead of judging your emotions or comparing your experience, just give them permission to exist. Knowing your grief is unique helps take off that external pressure.
That sounds incredibly liberating, actually, embracing the uniqueness of it. So beyond that really crucial mental shift, what are some other practical steps, things we can do to really give our mind and body the tangible support it needs during such a hard time? Because, like we said, it's not just emotional.
Right. Supporting your body and mind is absolutely foundational. It's so much harder to bear emotional stress when your physical self is run down. So exercise, even something simple like a daily brisk walk, maybe 20, 30 minutes, is one of the best ways to lift your mood, reduce stress hormones, and build resilience, both emotional and physical. For many people, practices like meditation or yoga can be really powerful too. They bring calm, help regulate a nervous system that might be constantly on edge. They activate that rest and digest system, countering the chronic stress effects.
Hmm.
And food plays a direct role. A nutrient-rich diet, whole foods, lean protein, balanced carbs is vital for healthy brain chemistry, stable blood sugar, emotional stability. And on the flip side, avoiding ultra-processed foods, things loaded with inflammatory oils and sugar, and steering clear of alcohol, which just disrupts sleep and brain chemistry, that can really help your healing. And, critically, protect your sleep like your health depends on it, because it really does. A consistent bedtime routine, limiting screens before bed, a cool, dark room, consistent wake-sleep times, it makes a huge difference in restoring mental clarity, emotional strength, and physical vitality. Sleep is when your body and mind do essential repair work.
And there is also a specific technique mentioned in the sources, something that can help dissolve those stuck emotions, that feeling of being trapped. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. The emotional freedom techniques, or EFT, often called tapping. It's a powerful tool for this. It works kind of like emotional acupuncture, but no needles. The theory is, by gently tapping with your fingertips on specific meridian points in your body while focusing on an emotional issue, you can help balance your energy system and release emotional pain that feels trapped or overwhelming. Yeah. You can learn the basics yourself. Lots of resources online. But if you're dealing with what seems like complicated or prolonged grief, working with an experienced EFT practitioner can offer invaluable extra guidance, help navigate those deeper, more persistent emotional patterns. This technique has actually been shown to calm the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and reduce the body's stress response. It can really help you move past what feels impossible and start to reconnect with hope with moving forward.
We've definitely uncovered a powerful and frankly often overlooked truth today. Grief isn't just an emotional journey, it's a significant, quantifiable factor in our long-term physical health and longevity. That connection between our emotional state and our physical well-being is just far more profound, more intricate than many of us realize, or maybe are taught to believe.
Indeed. Understanding that persistent grief can almost double the risk of death within 10 years. That it can lead to years of more doctor visits, more medication, profound physical and mental strain. It fundamentally changes how we must view and respond to loss. It just underscores the critical importance of acknowledging grief, proactively supporting it, and actively addressing it, especially when it stays intense and unrelenting for months and years. This isn't just a personal battle, it's a very real public health concern.
So for you, here's a thought to carry forward from today's deep dive. Considering how deeply interconnected our emotional and physical well-being truly are, what societal shifts might be necessary? In our workplaces, our communities, our healthcare systems, even just our personal conversations. What shifts might help us better support people through profound loss? And maybe help us recognize grief not just as this deeply personal burden, but as a significant public health issue that really demands our collective attention and proactive care. How might we evolve to truly embrace the full spectrum of human experience, including profound loss, in a way that genuinely supports both life and health?